Welcome to the Wisdom That Breathes channel. Across all our platforms, we try to share wisdom which is relevant and accessible to everyone. But on this particular platform, we go deeper into some of the ancient principles found within the scriptures. If you find some of the terminology difficult or inaccessible, then go over to our Keshava Swami YouTube channel where you'll be able to find other content which is perhaps more relatable. Thank you and enjoy the wisdom that breathes.
Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamaya Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalan Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanda Radha Kanda Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki. We can also recite these beautiful prayers penned by Srila Sanatana Goswami in Krishna Leela Stava, where he glorifies the Srimad Bhagavatam after obtaining Srimad Bhagavatam from Krishna directly. He fell in love with the Bhagavatam and he says, the Bhagavatam is my best friend, my constant companion. And he writes these beautiful prayers. Sarva Shastra Abdipiyusha Sarvaloke Sarvavedaika Satphala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadhya Sarvaloke Kadrikprada Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabhu Kalidvanto Ditaditya Shri Krishna Parivartita Paramananda Pathaya Prema Varshakshadayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namostute Madeka Bandhu Matsangin Madguru Man Mahadhana Manishtaraka Madbhagya Madananda Namostute Sadhu Sadhu Tadayi Chochataraka Anamuncha Kadachin Mam Premaret Kantayo Spura Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Hare Krishna. Good morning everyone. Thank you so much for coming. So today we continue our discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam. Yesterday we were talking about how Srimad Bhagavatam is as brilliant as the sun. And we talked about how Krishna and the Bhagavatam are non-different. Krishna Tulya Bhagavata Vibhu Sarva Shrai. That Krishna and Bhagavatam are exactly the same. And therefore, is mentioned in the very next verse, the very next line, Prati Shloke Prati Akshare Nana Arthakai, that in every single verse, what to speak of every single verse, in every single syllable of Bhagavatam, there is so much meaning here. Srila Sanatana Goswami says every single syllable rains pure love of Godhead. So when we remember and we recite and we reflect upon the syllables of Bhagavatam, then we can understand that our heart is being inundated with spiritual benefit. So yesterday we talked a little bit about how Jiva Goswami establishes that Srimad Bhagavatam is the ultimate place from which you get knowledge, and therefore we talked about how for Srila Prabhupada it was his biggest project, his priority to deliver this literature to the world. And what I wanted to do today is actually share with you the 5 most quoted verses from Srimad Bhagavatam that Srila Prabhupada recited in his preaching all over the world. We did an analysis and looked at all of Prabhupada's quotations in his books, in his lectures, in his conversations, in his morning walks. And we analyzed which verses did he quote the most, which lines were very, very important to him from the Srimad Bhagavatam. And so today we are going to look at those 5 verses. Is that okay? Okay, good. So just to kind of recap, yesterday we were talking about the brilliance of the Bhagavatam, and Jiva Goswami, he also uses this terminology. He says, Bhagavatam is Sarva Pramana Chakravati Bhuta, the emperor of all evidence. Therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam Pramanam Amalam Yad Vaishnavanam Priyam, it becomes very, very dear, priya to the Vaishnavas, because it's the pramanam, amalam, is the evidence which has no defect, no imperfection. And why is the Bhagavatam such an incredible evidence? Why is it considered the essence? And the Acharyas, they analyze this and they explain, or we can gather different points from them to establish why Bhagavatam is so special. The first reason is because the author wrote it in his maturity. There could be no more prolific author in the world than Srila Vyasadeva. There's no one in the world. Nobody comes even close to penning and authoring as many books as Srila Vyasadeva did himself. However, the Srimad Bhagavatam is considered the apex of his realization. Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite Kim Va Pareirishvara, that it was compiled by him in his maturity. So we know that Srila Vyasadeva, he inquired from Narad Muni why it was that although he had compiled so many literatures, he still felt himself to be dissatisfied. And therefore Narad Muni told him, you have to write another book. And then he wrote this book. It said that in one sense this book is written in Sanskrit, but in another sense this book is written in Samadhi Bhashya, the language of trance. Because after he was given the instruction to write Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Vyasadeva himself was given a darshan, a vision of the entire spiritual reality. And therefore, he truly became a rishi. See, rishi comes from the Sanskrit word drishya. And rishi literally, one literal meaning is one who can see, one who can penetrate beyond the external and see the deeper things. So in his samadhi, he was able to see so many things, and he wrote those things down. So it's written by the most prolific author in history, and it's specifically written by that author when he reached the heights of his realization, his complete maturity. Therefore, naturally, it must be a very special literature. But it's also explained that the Srimad Bhagavatam, in addition, is considered the highest, not just because of the author's maturity, but because of the listener's urgency. Parikshit was about to die. And when you're about to die and you only have a few days to live, you don't ask cursory questions. You don't ask about tangential matters. You hone in on the essence. And so Parikshit asked, what is the duty of someone who's about to die? And in response to that question, the whole Srimad Bhagavatam is spoken. Therefore, you can understand if the question is, what should I do when I'm about to die? And the listener has an urgency to know, then whatever surfaces in that literature is then incredibly, incredibly important. In addition, we can say that the speaker's task also means that this literature is the highest, because the speaker, Sukadev Goswami, and also the speaker who we're hearing in our Srimad Bhagavatam, Sutta Goswami, their task is to answer the questions of the most elevated people in creation. So like when a speaker is put on the spot, I have personal experience of this. Is this okay? When a speaker is put on the spot and people who ask you questions are themselves very, very learned, then that means that naturally what you have to do is increase your own ability to reciprocate with their learnedness. That's the word. And therefore the speaker's task was to respond to the questions of the sages, was to respond to the questions of Parikshit, and in this way. Is this disturbing? This is a little... Is it okay? I was thinking also this room, maybe I could just speak. Should I try? Without the mic. I'm just good. Like if I speak like this, you can hear me? Like, oh, they can't hear online. I see. Okay. Hare Krishna. Okay, this is good. Thank you so much. I just hold this. Oh, we can put it on there also. Thank you so much. Okay. All right. So, yes, so for this task. And then it's also mentioned that another way we can see why the Srimad Bhagavatam is so special is because of the literature's methodology. In one famous verse it's explained that the Vedas teach like a master teaches the servant. The Puranas teach like a friend teaches another friend. And the Kavis who compose the Kavya, the poetic literatures, they instruct like a lover instructs their beloved. So different scriptures, what they do is they utilize different methodologies by which to get the message through. Sometimes like a master to the servant, sometimes like a friend to the friend, and sometimes like a lover to the beloved. And it's explained that the Srimad Bhagavatam, which one does it utilize? All three. So sometimes you will see that the literature's methodology is to be very strong, very directive, very instructive. Sometimes you will see it will instruct in a very friendly way, by not directly attacking one's ego, but showing in a very palatable way. And sometimes the Bhagavatam teaches us in a very, very charming way, in a very, very enchanting way, in a very, very loving way, in a way which will ultimately melt our hearts. And therefore, it's a very, very incredible methodology that the literature uses to come back to help us come back to our original consciousness. So here you have it. This is why the literature is so incredible. And what we will do today, I will just show you the 5 top verses, most quoted verses by Srila Prabhupada from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Let's just do a quick quiz to see whether anyone wants to offer what some of those 5 may be. You can just tell us the first line. Any ideas? Which verses do you think from the Bhagavatam Krishna Prabhupada quoted the most? Yes. Save pumsham paro dharmo, that the supreme occupation of all living entities is to attain love for Krishna. Okay? Ete chamsha kala pumsha, that there are many incarnations, but Krishna is the supreme cause of all causes. Good. Any others? Dharmam tu shakshad bhagavat pranitam, that religion cannot be manufactured by any living entity, it can only be enunciated by the Supreme Lord. Okay, good. Yes? Vadanti tat tattva vidas, that the Supreme Absolute Truth is known in 3 phases, as the impersonal energy, as the localized Paramatma, and as the beautiful Bhagavan. Yes? Janmadyashayataha vayon itaratas, the very first verse of the Bhagavatam, that Krishna, Vasudeva, is the source of everything. Any others? I'm just going to carry on going till you get all 5. Tadvag Vishargo Janataga Viplavo, that Srimad Bhagavatam is the literature which will create a revolution in the world. All good verses. Nayam deho deha bhajam riloke, that we've been given this human form and it's not meant for just wasting. This is not in Bhagavatam, but it's a nice verse. Thank you for reminding us. Krishna says, I'm not in the Vaikuntha planets, I'm not just in the hearts of the yogis. Wherever the devotees are chanting my name, I am in that place. Good. I think you got about 2. Puna punascharvita charvananam, that people in this world are simply chewing the chewed, trying to get more happiness from that which has already been hackneyed. Nice verse. Yes? Narayanam namaskrityam, that one must first offer obeisances to Narayan Rishis and Mother Saraswati before reading Bhagavatam. Nice. Now I think you are just saying all the verses you know. Yes, at the back. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, that there are 9 processes of devotional service by which one can actually come face to face with the Supreme Lord. Nigamakalpataror Galitham Phalam, that the Vedic scriptures are like a tree and the Srimad Bhagavatam is the ripened fruit which is on that tree. You're up to about 3 now. Samashutaye padapallava plavam mahatpadam punya yasho murare, that this material world, which is like a big ocean, becomes like the amount of water in a calf's hoof print, and you can easily cross beyond it if you surrender. It's nice actually just to remember all the verses of the Bhagavatam, no? It's very nice actually, yes. Dharma projita ketavotra paramo, that this Bhagavatam throws away all cheating religion. Very good. You're still at 3. Okay, let's proceed. You did good. In every yatra I go to, sometimes I do this kind of survey just to see how much you're reading. So you did good. 3 is good. Okay, this is the 5th most quoted verse from Srimad Bhagavatam that Srila Prabhupada quoted. Either he quoted the verse in full or he often quoted one line from the verse. So you can repeat after me. Ete chamsha kala pumsha Krishnastu Bhagavan Svayam Indrari Vyakulam Lokam Mridayanti Yuge Yuge. So just the context of this verse is that the sages are asking Sutta Goswami 6 questions. And the 5th question that they ask Sutta Goswami is, can you say something about the incarnations of the Supreme Person? And in what ways and in what forms he descends to this world? So then what Sutta Goswami does is he explains that 22 avatars are there. Of course, avatars are asankhya, they're immeasurable, uncountable, but he mentions 22 of them. And after mentioning the 22 incarnations, then Sutta Goswami recites this verse in which he says, all of the above mentioned incarnations are either plenary portions or portions of the plenary portions of the Lord, but Lord Sri Krishna is the original personality of Godhead. All of them appear on planets whenever there is a disturbance created by the atheists. The Lord incarnates to protect the theists. So this is a very, very important verse. In fact, Jiva Goswami in Krishna Sandarbha, he actually identifies this verse as the Paribhasa Sutra. So every literature has a verse which is considered the emperor verse. And all other verses are seen in light of how they serve and they establish what is taught in this verse. And therefore this verse, Jiva Goswami tells us, is actually the emperor verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And the famous line that Srila Prabhupada would always quote is Krishna's tu Bhagavan Svayam. Like when I accepted sannyas, then I received the name Svayam Bhagavan Keshava Swami. So I have to humbly submit to you, it's sometimes a little bit uncomfortable to walk around the world with a name like that. Because people kind of look at you and think, Swayam, Bhagavan, Keshava, Swami. There's not even any Das in there, and there's no sign of Das. So often people ask me like, really? What? You know, we get a lot of YouTube comments asking this, so I'm just clarifying it on the mic again. That my spiritual master, when he offered me this name, then he told me that your mission is to travel around the world and establish that Krishna or Keshava, who is the source of all incarnations, is the Swayam Bhagavan. So there's nothing more to it than that, just clarify for our online audience. Krishna is the Bhagavan Swayam and we are all simply servants. So the whole Bhagavatam is actually meant to establish this fact. In the Bhagavatam there are, I think, 335 chapters, if I'm not mistaken. And of those 335 chapters, 90 deal directly with Krishna's pastimes in the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. That will constitute about 35% of the whole literature. Not just that, but if you look at practically every canto of the Bhagavatam, then either Krishna or Krishna's incarnations are all glorified. Because amidst everything that the Bhagavatam is trying to teach us, the ultimate thing that the Bhagavatam is trying to teach us is that we all have an eternal relationship with Krishna. And if we want to experience fulfillment of the heart, then it only really comes when we connect deeply with Krishna. Krishna has many names: Rasaraj, Rasika Shekhar, Rasanath, Rasa Bihari. All these names of Krishna indicating that he is the Raso Vesaha, the reservoir of all relish and transcendental relationship. And so the Bhagavatam is not only establishing that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that definitely the Bhagavatam establishes who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but the Bhagavatam also establishes who is the Supreme Personality of Krishna. You see, Shyamameva param rupam purim madhu purivara veyakai shaurakam dhyayam adya eva paro rasa. So the Bhagavatam doesn't just establish that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but the Bhagavatam goes even deeper and establishes who is the Supreme Personality of Krishna, because Krishna has many, many forms. And Shyamameva param rupam, Shyam Sundar Krishna is the highest form of Krishna. I'm saying that because we're in Chicago. I thought I'd let you know that verse. Shyamameva param rupam puri madhu puri vara. And that Krishna who is in Madhupuri or Mathura or Vrajamandala or Vrindavan, that Krishna is the highest. And that Krishna Keshorakam Dhyayam, when you meditate and you focus your mind and you invest your heart in establishing a relationship with that Krishna who is very youthful, in his youthful roop, Adya Eva Paro Rasa, especially when that Krishna is interacting with gopis of Vrindavan and having the most intensely sweet pastimes, that form of Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Krishna. And so the Bhagavatam doesn't just let us know who Krishna is, but what the Bhagavatam does is it takes us right into the inner life of Krishna. Sometimes the 10th canto is compared to the smiling face of Krishna. But some commentators say that the Srimad Bhagavatam 10th canto is the heart of Krishna. And if the 10th canto is the heart of Krishna, then it's explained that the 5 life ears of Krishna's heart are the Rasa Panchadhyay, the 5 chapters where Krishna is having his most confidential pastimes with the gopis of Vrindavan. And so this is very, very much something that Srila Prabhupada wanted to share with the world, that so many people know that yes, there is a God, but how do they know who is God and how God is so sweet? That is what the Vaishnavas very much want to establish. So therefore, Prabhupada quoted this verse many, many times. Now, number 4. This verse, none of you mentioned this verse. This verse also, Srila Prabhupada, surprisingly, sometimes people feel, because it's not one that immediately would come to your mind, but this is a verse that Srila Prabhupada quoted again and again. So you can repeat after me. Yashatma buddhi kunape tridhatuke Svadhi kalatra dishu bhauma ijyati Yatirtha buddhi shalile nakarhichich Janeshva bhigye susa eva gokhara. So this verse appears in the 84th chapter of the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, and the context is that Krishna and the queens of Dwarka have gone to Kurukshetra. Because at Kurukshetra there will be a solar eclipse, and there they've gone to perform religious ceremonies, but Krishna's internal reason why he wants to go to Kurukshetra is that he wants to meet who? The Brijabasis. Krishna, after a long delay of not returning to Vrindavan, invites the Brijabasis to come to Kurukshetra to meet him. So in Kurukshetra they meet, and in that meeting at Kurukshetra, something very, very special happens. While Krishna, the Dwarika queens, Draupadi, the Pandavas, so many individuals are there. What happens is that many, many sages appear in Kurukshetra. It's said that Narad appears, Vyasadeva appears, Agastya appears, Brihaspati appears, basically like everyone, all the who's who. All of them appear, the great sages in Kurukshetra. And when the great sages appear, then immediately Krishna begins to offer them great respect. And what Krishna does is he begins to glorify them. And one of the ways Krishna glorifies the sages when they come is he explains that this is the real meaning of coming to a holy place. The real meaning of coming to a holy place is not to bathe in a river, is not to only have a darshan, is not to just collect some blessings and some punya, but the real purpose of coming to a holy place is to meet the saintly people, to hear. It's the same thing when people come to a temple. If people come to a temple but they don't get the opportunity to hear or have a conversation or have a meaningful exchange with a devotee, then actually in one sense we can say they've come to the temple, but they haven't really come to the temple. And therefore, if we actually want the temple or a holy place to fulfill its objective, then what we need to do is ensure that every single person who comes in this building has an opportunity to hear from a devotee and have an exchange with a devotee. So, therefore, Krishna glorifies the sages, and then he makes this very, very strong point. One who identifies his self as the inert body composed of mucus, bile and air, who assumes his wife and family are permanently his own, who thinks an earthen image or the land of birth is worshipable, or who sees a place of pilgrimage as merely the water there, but who never identifies himself with, feels kinship with, worships or even visits those who are wise in spiritual truth, such a person is no better than a cow or an ass. Very heavy. So in this verse, Krishna himself directly is saying that people can advance in so much knowledge, but if they don't understand these basic things, that we are not this body, that the land in which we're born is not worshipable, we're not American, we're not Indian, we're not any of these things. If we identify ourselves so heavily with that, then again we've come in an illusion. Sometimes we learn so many things, but we miss the most obvious thing. Right? And therefore Krishna is saying that one can be so learned, but if one doesn't know that they're not the body, if one doesn't know that this birth is simply temporary and that they should not identify with their temporary role in this world, then actually they don't have any intelligence at all. Just like there's a story of Sherlock Holmes and Watson, and one day they went camping. So they set up their tent, and then they were sleeping next to each other in the sleeping bags. And so they were sleeping, and then at one point they both woke up in the middle of the night. And so they were lying down next to each other, and they looked up. And Sherlock said to Watson, "What do you see?" So he said, "I see the nighttime sky, thousands of stars." So Sherlock Holmes says, "What does this teach you?" So he said, "I'm looking at these thousands, this nighttime sky, and I'm seeing that astronomically it means that probably there are millions of galaxies and probably billions of planets. Sherlock said, do you see anything else? He said, astrologically I'm looking at the constellations and I'm seeing that Saturn is in Leo and this kind of planetary influence is there. He said, do you see anything else? He said, yes, I see that horologically, according to the way the sky is, it must be about 2:15 a.m. in the morning. He said, anything else? He said, meteorologically, I'm looking at the atmosphere and the sky and I'm seeing that tomorrow will be a very overcast day and there could be rain. And then Watson looks at Sherlock and he says, what do you see? And Sherlock says, I see that somebody has stolen our tent. It's very interesting that sometimes what happens is we analyze the world to the nth degree. We look so deeply into everything. We know everything about everything. You know, nowadays you can do like a PhD in like golf course management or something, you know. But we have no idea who we are. We have no idea what our real identity is. And therefore, in what sense can one be considered learned if they don't know the very basic thing and they don't live their life in cognizance of those very basic truths? Therefore, sometimes we read verses like this and we think, wow, this is like no better than a cow or an ass. Like this is like very heavy. But actually, when you look at it, it makes complete sense. And the point here, yatirtha buddhi shalilaina karhi chijja. If one goes to a holy place but doesn't associate with spiritual people, they miss the point. Like one time, Jeptaka Maharaj tells this story that Srila Prabhupada, he was in Calcutta somewhere, so they were driving and they stopped off at a life member's house. And they knocked the door and the servant came to the door. And so Srila Prabhupada says, Swamiji is here, is so-and-so here. So the servant went inside to call the life member. And he came back and the life member said, yes, he will come. He is just worshipping the deity right now. And once he finishes, he will come and receive you. You please just wait here. And then the servant walked off and Prabhupada said, he didn't understand. He didn't understand what's the point. I mean, he's worshipping the deity. That's wonderful. Prabhupada said, when the sadhu comes to your home, actually you should drop everything. And that becomes the priority. And therefore he said, he's worshipping the deity, but he hasn't understood that actually Krishna is active and worshipable within the hearts of the devotees. And therefore the priority actually, in this case Prabhupada said, even more than worshipping the deity, is to receive the devotee, because the devotees are very, they are Krishna's active agent in awakening our Krishna Bhakti. Krishna Bhakti Janma Mula Hoya Sadhu Sang is explained in Chaitanya Charitamrita. And therefore this is very important. The devotees, they are the ones who give us the entrance. So this is the fourth most quoted verse. Okay, here we go. The third most quoted verse you did mention. Well done. You can repeat after me. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam Pada Sevanam Archanam Vandanam Dasyam Sakyamatmani Vedanam. So you know the context of this verse in the 7th canto of the Bhagavatam. Prahlad Maharaj, he is a great saint. He has been trained and taught by Narad Muni even while he was in the womb. So as he comes out of the womb of his mother, then he's already very learned. And then Hiranyakashipu one day comes to Prahlad Maharaj and he says, you've been taught by my servant Sandana Marka. You've been going to school, you've learned so many things. Amongst all the things that you've learned, what is the best thing that you've learned? So the first time when Hiranyakashipu asks Prahlad Maharaj, taking him on his lap, his young boy, and he asks him this question, the first answer that Prahlad Maharaj gives, that sadhumanye suravarya dehinam sada samudvigna asatgrihatva hitvatmapatam grihamandakupam vanam goto yad dharimashrayeta. The first answer that Prahlad Maharaj gives is he basically says to Hiranyakashipu that anyone who has fallen into the deep, dark well of materialistic family life, that person immediately, vanam gato, they should get out, they should leave, and they should go to the forest. And there, harimashrayeta, they should take shelter of the Supreme Lord. So, as you can imagine, Hiranyakashipu wasn't impressed with that. He was totally not happy at all. And then he looked at his servants, who were even more unhappy and scared. And Hiranyakashipu told his servant, Sanda and Amarka, go back and train him again. And this time you better do a good job. So they went back and they trained Prahlad Maharaj again. And then they came back a second time. And then again, Hiranyakashipu took Prahlad Maharaj on his lap. And the second time that he asked Prahlad Maharaj, what is the best thing that you've learned? Then on that second occasion, Prahlad Maharaj recites this verse. Hearing and chanting about the transcendental holy name, form, qualities, paraphernalia and pastimes of Lord Vishnu, remembering them, serving the lotus feet of the Lord, offering the respectful worship with 16 types of paraphernalia, offering prayers to the Lord, becoming His servant, considering the Lord one's best friend, and surrendering everything unto Him. These 9 processes are accepted as pure devotional service. So there are even some temples now where you can go, I think, if I'm not mistaken, in Udupi in India, where you can go to see the deity, and the deity is actually covered by a screen, and the screen has 9 holes in it. So the only way you can go and take darshan is by looking through one of those holes. And those 9 holes represent the 9 processes of devotional service. So this is how we actually come face to face with the Lord. You can't see the Lord with these eyes, but when we engage in these processes, then it's through these processes that one gets to actually have a darshan of the Supreme Lord. And it all begins with Shravanam, with hearing. The Bhagavatam also talks about this, Shruta Ikshita, that one sees through the ears. And therefore to sit down and hear Harikatha, to hear about the Lord, this is considered extremely primary and foundational. One time Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was giving a lecture like this, and someone came in and walked straight past him while he was giving the lecture, went to the deities, took darshan, and then offered some donation, bowed down, and he was walking towards the door. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur shouted at that person and said, "How was your eye massage?" Like, eye massage? Just took darshan. Yes, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he said, it was simply an eye massage. In other words, he said to that person, you have no eyes to see the Supreme Person. Your consciousness is not sufficiently purified, and your eyes are not tainted with the salve of love, and therefore you can't see the Supreme Person. Rather, you do better to sit down and listen. And if you listen and your consciousness becomes purified, then you can actually see. So it all begins with Shravanam. So these 9 processes of devotional service have been analyzed and explored by all the acharyas in many ways. In the 3rd canto of the Bhagavatam it's mentioned that one can do all of these 9 processes of devotional service in the 3 modes of nature. And therefore, when one refines the way in which they do and engage in these processes, then one comes face to face with the Lord. The second most quoted verse of Srila Prabhupada that many of you mentioned is this one. So we can repeat together. Savepum sham paro dharmo ato bhakti radhok saje ahaituki pratihata yayatma suprasidati. So the context of this verse is that Sutta Goswami and the sages, right again at the beginning of the Bhagavatam, are having a conversation. And of the 6 questions that the sages ask, the first question is, what is the supreme duty? What is the ultimate, what will give one the ultimate benefit for all living entities? And in answer to that question, Sutta Goswami recites this verse. So this verse Prabhupada quoted again and again to establish that there's actually only one religion. There are not many religions in this world. The only one religion is the religion which establishes and reawakens love within the heart of the practitioner. And that love can be of different qualities. That love can be awakened to different degrees. And therefore it's not that someone has love and another person has no love. Everyone has love because it's eternally established within the heart. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prem. Sadhya Kabunoi. You don't have to get it. It's there in your heart. But it's only revealed and reawakened to different degrees. And when one comes to the point where their love means that their devotional service has no agenda, ahaituki, no hetu, no motivation behind it, and when that devotion is such that it is never interrupted, apratihata, then one can understand the love has been awakened fully. And so this again is a very, very core teaching that ultimately, our advancement in spiritual life is measured by one thing and one thing only, which is how much genuine love we have awakened within our hearts. And then the final verse. This is the most quoted verse, Prabhupada. Lines of this verse Prabhupada quoted again and again. And again, the context of this verse is it's Prahlad Maharaj speaking again to Hiranyakashipu. After he explains to Hiranyakashipu for the second time what's the greatest thing that he learned, then he again goes on to give Hiranyakashipu further advice. So you can repeat after me. Nate vidu svartagatim hi vishnum durasaye ye bahirarthamanina Anda yathande rupaniyamana Depi satantriyam murudam nibaddha. Persons who are strongly entrapped by the consciousness of enjoying material life and who have therefore accepted as their leader or guru a similar blind man attached to external sense objects cannot understand that the goal of life is to return home back to Godhead and engage in the service of Lord Vishnu. As blind men guided by another blind man miss the right path and fall into a ditch, materially attached men led by another materially attached man are bound by the ropes of fruitive labor which are made of very strong cords, and they continue again and again in materialistic life, suffering the threefold miseries. So this is Prabhupada quoting this verse again and again to expose the biggest lie in the world. Yesterday we were at the university and we were talking about the lies that we all accept. And there is one lie which is considered the biggest lie in the world. This lie has perpetuated for generations. This lie is accepted in every single culture. This lie is accepted by people who even say they don't accept this lie. This lie is accepted even when people in their life see firsthand that it's a lie. They continue pursuing this lie. And this lie is the basis of all subsequent lies in the world. What is that lie? That lie is that material achievements, material arrangements, material objects, material relationships will make me happy. And that lie perpetuates. All of us, even those who say they don't believe in this lie, we are still entrapped by this lie. And therefore Srila Prabhupada was traveling the world and exposing that lie. That most people, bahir artha manina, what they're doing is they're putting the focus on the external. They're putting the focus on all the temporary, transitory, material, ethereal things. And none of those things will actually bring us happiness. They don't know what is their real self-interest. They have placed their energy and attention into the wrong things. And how does it perpetuate? Because one blind person is leading another blind person. And what do? One materialistically motivated person then becomes the authority for everyone else, who then naturally become materially engrossed, and all of them fall into the ditch, as the Bhagavatam says. And so Srila Prabhupada quoted this again and again. So here today, just to share with you, Prati Shloke Prati Akshare Nana Arthakai. These are 5 verses. Prabhupada found it very necessary to continue reminding the world about the teachings of these Bhagavatam verses. So you can continue meditating, thinking about these verses. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita explains that shlokas or verses are like sandalwood. So the more you rub them, the more you contemplate them, the more you think about them, the more you discuss them, then actually it becomes more and more fragrant. It illumines your consciousness in greater and greater ways. And that is the great opportunity that each one of us have, because Srila Prabhupada has brought all of these beautiful verses into our lives. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you very much. So, shall we take some questions? Yes, if anyone has any questions or comments or anything you would like to ask them.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you so much for the wonderful class. So I was just wondering, in the verse which Prahlad Maharaj spoke to Hiranyakashipu about Shravan, Kirtan and Vishnu. So in that verse, mostly the ISKCON devotees, they try to serve the Lord in the mode of das. But is it possible for us to go beyond that and become the Sakha of Krishna? And then, a follow-up question is that how to develop the unalloyed devotional service into the Lord?
Yes. So here we have the 9 processes of devotional service. So sometimes we are very much worshipping in the mood of dasya. And so is it possible to enter into more intimate exchanges with the Supreme Lord? So this is the ultimate gift of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that yes, very much so. Anarpita chiram chirat karunaya vitirna kalo samarpayitum unatvajala rasam svabhakti shriyam. Is explained in Chaitanya Charitamrita that anarpita, that which was never given before, Samarpita now is being given freely. And what was that? That was never given before. That very intimate opportunity to associate with and interact with the Supreme Lord in these more confidential mellows of relationship. That Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is giving everyone an opportunity for. However, that must be done step by step. And therefore, Rupa Goswami tells us that we first engage in sadhana bhakti in the mood of a servant. And what happens is that sadhana bhakti has a potentiality. Kriti sadhya bhavet sadhya sadhya sa sadhana bida nitya siddhasya bhavasya prakatyam riddhi sadhyata. That what is the definition of sadhana bhakti? That sadhana bhakti or devotional service rendered in a deep mood of humility and servitude, nitya siddhasya bhavasya, it has the potentiality of bhav. And therefore when one renders service as a servant, then what will happen eventually is that more spontaneous emotions of love will arise within the heart of the practitioner. And then they will be able to actually enter into more confidential realms of devotional service. And how do you know that you're on the level of bhav? So then that is explained. How do you know that you're ready for such more intimate connections with the Supreme Lord? That is explained. Kshantiravyartha kalatvam viraktir manashunyata ashabandha samutkantha namagane sadaruchi ashakti gunakhyane pritistad vasati stale ityadayo nubhavasyur jata bhavan kure jane. So Rupa Goswami explains that there are certain characteristics by which you will know that your devotional service has now matured into an ecstatic emotion. And what is that? Kshantir, an incredible level of tolerance. One cannot be provoked by anything or anyone. Avyartha kalatvam, a complete aversion to wasting even one moment of time. Virakti, complete detachment from anything material. One just has no more, one is just no longer interested in material things. Manashunyata, a complete absence of pride. Ashabandha, incredible hope within the heart. Samutkantha, incredible enthusiasm at every moment for engaging in bhakti. Namagane sadaruchi, deep addiction to chanting the holy names of the Lord. Pritistad vasati stale, a great love for living in the holy places. So like this, one can then begin to understand that we can then enter into higher things. So we render in the mood of service to get purified, and as we get purified, then we gain entrance into higher realms like this. Is this okay? Thank you. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you very much. Your class is very simple and crystal clear. Yesterday was the first time I happened to see your books. They're amazing. The format, the simplicity, including the paper quality, and also the
Okay.
Thank
I'll let
you
the
very
printer
much,
know.
Maharaj. Nice books.
Thank you.
Maharaj, I want to have some clarity about dharma, especially in the Bhagavad Gita. The Lord says,
Sarvada.
So here dharma often referred in two terms. One is religion and duty. So I have a couple of questions on that. If it is religion, that means one should not change their so-called religion in the board, because in the religion we have so many religions. So I want clarity on that. If it is
Thank you so much, yes. So Dharma is what the entire Bhagavad Gita is spoken to establish. If you look at the very first syllable of the Bhagavad Gita, Dhritarashtra, Dhri, and if you look at the very final syllable of the Bhagavad Gita, Dhruva Nitir Matir Ma. So one commentator says that if you take the first syllable and you add it to the final syllable, then it makes the word Dharma, because the whole of the Bhagavad Gita is trying to encapsulate that concept. So that concept is very, very deep, and Dharma takes place on different levels. Therefore, this verse is saying Paro Dharma. So Dharma can be on different levels. There is the Dharma of this world. You have a Kula Dharma, a duty to your family. You have a Pati Dharma, a duty as a husband. You have so many dharmas, a Varna Dharma, an Ashram Dharma. Then there is Apad Dharma, there is emergency duties that you have. And then there is Sanatan Dharma or Paro Dharma, the duties that you have in the spiritual context. So therefore, Dharma is a difficult word to translate because it relates to literally how to conduct your existence so that it bears the fruit that it's meant to bear. But broadly speaking, Krishna says we have two dharmas, a Swadharma and a Sanatan Dharma. The Swadharma is the duties which are pertaining to this body and this mind. And therefore, Krishna repeats that verse twice. Shreyan Swadharma Viguna Paradharmat Svanustitat. That don't do another Swadharma, do your own Swadharma. Krishna repeats that verse twice to explain to us that we have a unique psychophysical nature, a unique ability, a unique personality, and we have to learn to honor that and utilize that for higher pursuits. So we each have a Swadharma, and then we each have a Sanatan Dharma. And our Sanatan Dharma, Krishna also repeats in the Bhagavad Gita that verse twice. Manmana bhavamad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. Your Sanatan Dharma is to always remember Krishna and never forget him. So basically we have two dharmas, and these two dharmas are reinforced by Krishna in two verses which he repeats twice. And what Krishna ultimately explains at the end of the Bhagavad Gita is Sarva Dharman Parityaja. Give up your dharma. And that's not, you see, dharma is here. So sometimes people are confused. Sarva Dharma Parityaja. Some people even think maybe it's a misprint. Maybe it's supposed to be Sarva Adharma Parityaja. Give up irreligion. No, Sarva Dharman is not a mistake, is what Krishna says. But Krishna, what he's telling us is don't give up dharma and go down to adharma. That's not what Krishna wants. Krishna is saying give up dharma and go to paradharma. So people get confused. Why is Krishna telling me to give up dharma? Then does that mean I should be adharmic? No, Krishna is saying don't go from there to there, go from there to paradharma. Because Krishna is saying, Mamekam, Saranam Raja, unto me I have to surrender. So dharma has to be understood. And people get confused about which dharma to follow at which time. Therefore it's mentioned, Dharmasya Tattvam Nihitam Guhayam Mahajano Yena Gata Sapantha. If you actually want to understand what's real dharma, dharma is hidden within the hearts of the great devotees. They can reveal to you at any given time what the right dharma is. Because Mahabharata is basically a whole story about how different individuals get mixed up as to when to follow which dharma, and it gets them in a lot of trouble. Because understanding dharma is not easy. But when we understand what is a dharma, what is paradharma, then we understand how to synchronize everything to ultimately achieve the goal of our life. Does that make sense?
Maharaja, thank you for the wonderful class once again. And this verse, in the purport to that, Srila Prabhupada writes how this Bhagavatam is all rasa, and it's not really read, it's drunk. Bhagavatam is rasa, it's just drunk. Because every part of it throughout from beginning to end is just pure rasa. And so, a few days ago we were conversing, Yamuna Jivan Prabhu and I, on the many different Bhagavatams in the Bhagavatam. And like the Chaturshloki Bhagavatam feels very straightforward. It's like Krishna saying, I'm the source of everything. Everything, if you think anything's outside of it, it's Maya, and I'm in things outside of things, and attaining to this point, it doesn't seem so rasa laden. Whereas there's parts of the Vishnu Puran that are maybe even more rasa laden. Prabhupada posts those verses. So, what makes the Bhagavatam the Bhagavatam? There's so many Bhagavatams, conversations, and at different times, different Bhagavatams. How is something identified as this is the Bhagavatam, and like other Puranas are not the Bhagavatam?
Yes. So yes, this is a very interesting point, that what is actually the Bhagavatam? Like there's this famous story where one devotee asked Prabhupada, is Joan of Arc in the Bhagavatam? And then Prabhupada said, is she a devotee? And the devotee said, yes, she is also in the Bhagavatam. Because the Bhagavatam is the narrations of the Supreme Lord and those who are in love with the Supreme Lord. And therefore, in one sense, the Bhagavatam has a very broad definition that we can say, just like we know that the Bhagavatam here is 18,000 verses, the Bhagavatam on heavenly planets is much more vast. And therefore, it's said that Krishna, for example, has an incarnation in every single one of the 8.4 million species of life. But we only hear in our Bhagavatam of some of those. So, the Lord's glories are unlimited, and the Lord's glories can be enumerated in different places, and we can say in one sense all of that is the Bhagavatam. Yeah, this 18,000 verses also has its speciality, because there is a very specific strategy, there is a very specific trajectory that Sukadev Goswami is taking Pariksha on in order to awaken that love for the Supreme Lord. And so not only is the Bhagavatam expert in enumerating and illuminating who is that Supreme Lord and giving that, but the Bhagavatam is very, very beautiful because it takes us on a journey which helps us to then actually appreciate that Supreme Lord. And sometimes it may seem on that journey that much of what we're reading is not necessarily rasa-laden, like genealogy or, different aspects of creation. But there are two things to understand here. One thing is that it's still considered to be something which takes us to rasa and helps us to relish rasa, and therefore in one sense is just as important and just as valuable and just as dear to us as the rasa jnanam of the Bhagavatam. But the other aspect is that even those very technical parts of the Bhagavatam, actually the great devotees, the rasikas, even they learn how to relish those parts of the Bhagavatam. And therefore, for example, one devotee, very eminent scholar, devotee scholar, writes a book, The Aesthetics of Vedanta. In other words, Vedanta is normally sometimes seen to be very dry, very very philosophical, analytical. But even when one looks very deeply, then one can actually find a great charm, a great relish, even within that seemingly very hard, defined, like very philosophical knowledge. So yes, the Bhagavatam is like a zip file, and as one has more and more qualification, then they are actually able to unlock more and more. And therefore the sages say, Vayam tu na vitripyama utamashloka vikrame yatrinvatam rasa jnanam svadu svadu pade pade. They said, we never tire to hear this knowledge that you're telling us. And they don't say this when Sutta Goswami is reciting the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam. They say this very early in the Bhagavatam, when the philosophy is happening, and they still identify it, Yatrinvatam rasa jnanam. They say what you're telling us is rasa jnana. And svadu svadu pade pade, we're tasting it at every moment. Therefore one must become a rasika, muhuraho rasika bhuvi bhavuka, and then they can actually access the rasa of the Bhagavatam. And so there is rasa everywhere. Prabhupada said that once. The Bhagavatam is like a sweet bowl. Anywhere where you bite, it's sweet. But it takes qualification. I don't know if you wanted to add anything to this. Or...
No, Maharaj, thank you. It's such a actually very satisfying answer, and I think that's the challenge for us on the more neophyte stage, of how to taste the Bhagavatam, all parts of it.
Yeah.
Because it's sometimes it seems formidable, to get through the difficult cantos.
Yeah.
But how to start tasting those, and we ourselves have to become rasikas, like you were saying.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. This is a question from Govinda Mataji. She was here, she had to leave for work. I don't know if the youth here would be happy with this question. You mentioned that we need to be in cognizance. We need to live in cognizance. We understand to stay protected in our spiritual life, we need to stay close to what Srila Prabhupada has left for us in terms of rules and regulations. Sometimes we notice that with time, certain rules are getting a little diluted or not having as much importance, especially in the youth. For example, eating only prasadam or non-veg garlic. How to try to continue to follow what Prabhupada has given us carefully. I just wanted to add, in the process of parenting and when the kids are teens, while we want to encourage their attraction for bhakti in one way, being too lenient on the other side, are we missing out on something? How to, not like forcefully, you have to follow, but how to help them understand the importance in a deeper sense.
Yeah. So Bhakti Yoga is a science, and therefore, according to how attentively and how diligently one practices all the elements of that science, then naturally they will get a certain result. So if we become a little flexible on things, then we run the risk of missing the result. Therefore, definitely, rules and regulations are there for a reason. However, one must also be expert in their own life, how to inspire themselves, and one must be expert in a community, how to inspire everyone else to naturally come to a point by which they appreciate those rules and regulations, and they follow them from a space of authenticity and genuine desire. You see, Rupa Goswami says you can go off the road on two sides, niyamagraha and niyamagraha, by not following the rules and regulations, or by fanatically following them without understanding the purpose. And we could also say to fanatically follow them without not really believing in the value of them, but just doing it because someone else told you to do it. That can also be harmful. So it's a very delicate balance, because we're living in a time when nobody likes rules and regulations. Everyone wants to be free. But the interesting thing is, what we don't realize is that real freedom actually comes from following the rules and regulations. Therefore, Prabhupada said the regulative principles of freedom. So it's how do we inspire people to realize that the true expression of their freedom comes when they follow rules and regulations. Because what those rules and regulations do is they develop an internal Krishna consciousness and detachment from things that allow you to experience the totality of life. That is something which has to be inspired. So yes, you have to inspire your children. Good luck. That's why I'm not doing it. And you have to inspire each other. But I think ultimately the best way to do it is to be a good example. Because if you're following all the rules and regulations and you're naturally joyful, you're naturally showing what the fruit of that does to someone's personality, then that may do more to inspire people than simply forcing. But it's a balance, because you can't also just go around inspiring everyone and not saying anything when things are wrong. You have to say things sometimes. So, what to do? Balancing act. Thank you. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Actually, I'm asking this question on behalf of one devotees that we are having a Bhagavad Gita book, and we were reading the verse Karmanya Vadikarase, and so that is the most difficult verse to go through, and we were just having discussion, and one devotee was saying that we should do our duty without any expectation. And I was saying it's not easy to do it without any expectation. Like if I say I'm writing a book and I don't care if anyone reads it or not, then why would I write a book? So can you please give a deeper meaning on that, how one should do the duty or whatever we are doing?
I think there's a difference between not caring about the outcome and not being attached to the outcome. If you're a parent, you have to care about your children. How in the world will you be a parent? You have to care, you have to want, you have to desire that they become what they can and should be. But there's a certain point at which one knows that I've done everything I can, and now whatever happens is between them and Krishna. So you see, like, if the detachment comes before the endeavor, then it's like irresponsibility. But what we do is the detachment comes after the endeavor. In other words, to put the full endeavor in, you put your full care, you put your full heart, you put everything you have into it. And once you've done that, then you can go to bed at night and say, I did everything I could. And now let's just let Krishna manifest his plan. Because I can be sure that whatever Krishna manifests from here is for the best, because I've done my best. Does that make sense? So I don't think it's like when we say be detached from the outcome, it means that you just don't care about anything anymore. Like say, give your example that you want to write a book and you want people to benefit from it. Of course, how can you put your best endeavor if you don't genuinely want to help people, if you don't genuinely want to see that people will receive this? And so naturally that desire is there. But once you've then, with that desire, given your best endeavor, then you step back and say, okay, let's see what Krishna wants to make of it. And I'm totally okay with whatever Krishna. That's what Prabhupada said. Now I've come here, you can make me a success or a failure as you wish. That's pretty amazing. Like, are you ready to be a complete failure, at least externally, and be totally okay with it? Prabhupada was. And that's what actually empowered him to make his greatest contribution. So sometimes people think you make your greatest contribution by being attached to something. But actually it's the very opposite. You make your greatest contribution when you're devotionally detached from it. Because then it means if you're successful, you never get proud. And it means if it somehow doesn't work out according to what you planned, then you never become discouraged or depressed, because you know Krishna's got a better plan. So it's actually very beautiful. Work as though everything depends on you, and then let go knowing everything depends on Krishna. Does that help? Should we finish here? I see more hands, but I don't know what we should do. Oh, we have a program after this as well. Hare Krishna. So I think we have to end here. Thank you very much. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.